Hey, Logan, welcome to Crosswalk Talk. Thanks for joining me.
Oh man, thank you for having me.
We are speaking with Logan Cain of the award-winning group Cain. They have a new children's picture book. I'm so blessed. B&H is the publisher. Of course, your siblings are Madison and Taylor. Um, Let me briefly read a summary of the book, the children's book. It follows the adventures of Tay Tay Tangerine, Lolo Lemon, and Maddie Melon. I love those names. And it follows their adventures and it reminds children that God is with them in every circumstance. I love that. I love children's books. I think I learn more from children's books than my own kids do, Logan.
Yeah.
How did you guys come up with the idea for a children's book? How long have you guys been thinking about this? Of course, it's based on one of your most popular songs.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, we children's books meant very little to me until I had children, which I think is a pretty common human
Yeah.
experience. Um, but as the story goes for me, one night I was reading. We had a routine, as most families do, and my daughter gravitated towards the same couple of books, and then one night, my 2-year-old, who obviously can't read, started to recite this book word for word in order, as if she were reading it. And it just felt like bells in my head, like kids are learning obviously all the time, but they're memorizing these books. And I started thinking about how being a parent is very like intimidating. The concept of trying to teach your kid godly things feels daunting sometimes. And so if this is an arrow, that a new parent can put in their bag, and we try to write it in a way that stays relevant for kids for several years, where there are very simple truths and then there are bigger concepts as well. And so, yeah, I just realized that, one, thank you to all the authors of books that we use to teach my daughter, but I just thought we ought to get in the game here. We ought to get involved, if for no one else than our own kids, but just to the other parents who are out here trying to figure out how to train their kids in the way they should go.
Well, is the major theme of the book? It's a pretty simple but profound concept that we're blessed in life, and it's often the fact that we forget that we're blessed. We get in trials and tribulations, and we just bemoan, our situation. But that's kind of the point of the book, isn't it? Because it follows these characters in their daily walk, and it reminds them of how God is watching over them and is with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's really good for us. Jesus said, like, unless you're like one of these little kids, you'll not inherit the kingdom. And I think that no matter how big our problems get as adults, they're not really different than when they are when they're little. So we tried to make the situations, like my character is trying to do a backflip in front of a crowd and he crashes and he's embarrassed. And being embarrassed is a huge trial to overcome as a little kid, but being embarrassed is rooted in pride, which is a huge trial for an adult. So I think that we tried to not get too heady, but to understand that, like, if we can distill these down, even as I'm reading it over my little girls, these truths are true to me as well. And a lot of it, the song itself is about the blessing that we sing about isn't necessarily the blessings you can put your hands on, but the blessed assurance that Jesus is yours, that
Yeah.
your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. That sort of blessing. And so I think that that's just another way that we're hoping to raise our kids to understand that in an increasingly material and content driven world, that your value's not wrapped up in what you have or what you can make, but to whom you belong.
Amen to that. I know a few times I've punished my kids by making them write down 5 or 10 ways that they're blessed when they're
Yeah.
complaining about something. And I don't know if it helps them, but I think it's a good thing. It's a good trait to take into adulthood. You guys are new parents, somewhat new parents, and I think Taylor and Madison are as well. I'm curious, Logan, how has being a father changed you personally? Maybe changed how you look at life or changed how you view God?
Yeah. I When I found out we were having my first, people tried to tell me that it would enlighten my relationship to God the Father. And unfortunately, all the cliches are true. Everything that people said is really true, but um I didn't know how much of my identity I would wrap up in wanting to be a good dad. And so I think how it's changed me is just that understanding of um the the sacrifice that parents across the globe make on a daily basis, that uh it it really feels like that's what I was made for. And I was so standoffish about having kids, but I felt like a part of me come alive when my kids were born. And it really does make me much more desperate for time with the Father, to be honest, because I see how important my time is to my little girls. And I was listening to somebody talk about it this week. They were basically likening it to, um, God keeps a seat open next to him. And if you walk by and don't take it, he doesn't love you less, but he sure loves it when you come and sit down with him. And that's kind of how I feel. Like if my girls are playing or if they're having a nice time, and I don't get my feelings hurt if they don't want me to pick them up. But anytime they ask me to pick them up, it just fills my
Mhm.
heart with so much joy. And it's like, just and that I think has grown a lot because I lived so concerned that I wasn't doing enough in my relationship with God, and or that I should be ashamed of the fact that I don't like show my daily dependence always like I wish I did. And but just that concept of like, it just makes God so glad and so
Yeah.
happy to be with us anytime we choose that. It makes me excited. So it's great. It's like I've got two little reminders of the gospel crawling around in my house.
Absolutely. Children, the relationship between children and their parents should be a word picture of the gospel. And it's a reminder of how God views us and how we should view our children. What was the Cain house like? Like, what was the Cain household like growing up? Were you guys singing all the time? I mean, um, at what point, let me ask this, at what point did you guys think, hey, we might want to sing as a group when we get older?
Yeah, well, the girls were singing a lot, and Taylor's been singing since she was little. I was, although it may not seem it right now, but I was really shy when I was a kid. I was one of those. I would hide behind my mom's legs, and I didn't like attention. Like like I said, my character gets embarrassed. That's true to my story. That's what I hate the most. And so I didn't sing much. And then, as you do, if you have parents who have started a church like my mom and dad did, we became the worship band as early as we could be put to service, because it's hard to fill a worship band on Sundays sometimes. And so I was a drummer from the time I was a little kid, and then wasn't really until we got into college that we started singing together. And we don't, we work at it now. We practice a lot, but at the beginning, when we first started singing together, we all just sort of naturally fell into our respective three parts and made one chord. And but to be honest with you, Michael, I didn't think it was something that I could achieve.
Hmm.
It was so far out of the realm of possibility for me that I couldn't even really recognize the parts of me that God had made for it. And so I had just sort of, like many people do and people in the Bible do, I had just decided, like, I had observer bias, and I had decided this was not for me. And so I ignored all of the evidence that God was opening doors for it. And I'm just thankful that God's faithful even when we're not. And he kind of just continued to put things in our path, and um restored some relationships in our family. Our very first manager was my mom's biological father, who had was not a part of our life when we were growing up, and God restored that relationship. And he managed us through. He worked in the songwriting industry here in Nashville in the country genre. And so we started out as a sort of faith-based country band. We were just independent. We were kind of faceless. And after 5 years of it, we thought, well, it's not really taking off, but what it has done is it's caused us to kind of fall away from being faithfully attending a church, serving, tithe, like the spiritual pillars of our life. And so we were going to just quit music and just go back to being on a worship band. And I think it froze.
No, I'm
Sorry
here.
about that. You're here. Okay. Well, I'll pick up. Um, so we decided, if music was not going to work as a career, then let's just go back to how we were raised. And so we joined a church here in town. We started attending faithfully and regularly. I got on the service team. I was on the coffee team my first Sunday, and we sort of over months of time worked our way back into being on the worship team, but it was never all three of us at the same time. And the first Sunday where all three of us were leading together and sang just sort of fell into harmony like we had for the last 5 years. The congregation and the staff, and they were kind of like, hey, that felt that felt like you've done that before. And so we got to talking about it all with the pastors, and they introduced us to the guy who manages us now. And Ron Smith played a huge part in encouraging us to seek God about making Christian music. And it's funny because I don't know why we'd never considered it before. I think we were just trying to honor the doors that had been opened and following what we thought was the right path. But none of it was wasted. And so that was the road that led us back to Christian music. But I'm thankful it did, because before we ever had our first Christian music meeting, we said right then and there, this is who we are, and we'll never cross over. We'll never leave. Like, God led us back to Christian music, and whether or not this works, this is the kind of music we want to make. This is what we want to do with our lives, is make music for the church. And so here we are, a couple years after that, 5 years later. I'm getting to talk to you about all God's doing, and I get to write kids' books, and it's a lot of fun.
What was your name Cain when you were another group?
We went by the Cains.
Okay.
And I think it was the Cains trio before that, which is somehow we we just condensed it and condensed it and condensed it, and we just wanted to spend less on posters. We were just getting them smaller and smaller and smaller. And so Cain, and by the time it became this iteration of it, we didn't think for a second about Cain and Abel. I'm the only Cain family really that I know, and I'm so used to people being used to that being our name. And so that's been a funny, sort of quirky, there are people on the internet that want to be upset about anything they can, but it's been fun.
You're not kidding about that. I'm curious. It seems like your music grew in popularity right in the middle of the pandemic. Were you guys releasing your first CCM songs right when the pandemic hit?
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, our first song, Rise Up, Lazarus, went out for ad at Christian radio the week before the pandemic started, March 6th weekend. And the next weekend, we were in a church in Dallas, Texas, getting ready to do a show with Zach Williams and We the Kingdom. It was our first tour we were going on. We were so excited. And then out comes this news that, the world has decided to stop turning. And it's just funny because it comes on the heels of that story I just told you. I tried to tell you as briefly as I could, but it was 2012 when we first started pursuing music professionally. And then 8 years later, we felt like God had, kicked the doors open, and here we go. And then to a screeching halt comes not just our career, but everybody's, it seems. And so we had to get together, the three of us, and say, okay, did we mean what we said? Are we okay if this music only ever glorifies God privately in our homes, maybe in the church we attend, like in the face of uncertainty, which was, the term that we use so much, but in the uncertainty, did we actually decide to write Christian music because we felt like it's what God had made us to do? Or did we feel like that was another way in? And so I'm thankful that the desire of our heart was to make music, even if it never meant anything more than making music that glorified God. But yeah, dude, I mean, that began the first 4 months of that song. Very few people played it on the radio. The feedback was, people don't need new artists right now. They need who they can depend on. They need the voices that have been with them over the years, because they have no idea what to expect and what's going on. And so we understood, but just waited at home. And then in August of 2020, we got word that one of the biggest stations in the country was going to take a chance on us and play the song. And because they did, some other stations took on, and on the story goes. And so that song survived, and because of it, we were able to come out of the pandemic and have a very busy 2021 and go and see a lot of people and do a lot of shows and but it's so good to remember those times. We've gotten to where we don't talk about it as much. We try to not think about that time in life, but the theme of a pile of memorial stones has been very present for me this year, where I feel God drawing near whenever I go and remember all that he's done. And I think that that's something that he calls us to all the time. So I appreciate you asking. It's been a long time since I've talked about it, but it really is a miracle. Miracles are different for a lot of people, but the fact that we're still here and getting a chance, that these songs are in people's homes and we get pictures of people reading this book with their kids like it's part of their bedtime routine already. And it just, I'm so humbled at the idea that somebody in the world can pick up their phone or computer and listen to this music. And it makes me so thankful.
Let's close with a more lighthearted subject.
Okay.
I would love to chat with you more about that, but I need to kind of close here.
Yeah, no worries.
You guys are one of the best dressed groups in Christian music, of course. You guys match. Anytime you come on stage, I'm always excited to see what you're wearing and your sisters are wearing. How did that happen? How did you guys fall into wanting to match every show?
Yeah, honestly, it didn't even start that way. It's almost like we now retroactively get so much credit for. We used to struggle very much because our clothing styles are so different, the three of us, um, and so part of it was we grew up watching a movie called That Thing You Do. It's a movie Tom Hanks directed about the one-hit wonders, and they always wore these matching suits, and so that just was kind of in our hearts. And so when we signed a record deal and we did our very first like professional photo shoot, Taylor has kind of always taken the mantle of what are we going to wear, and Taylor said, I don't know, whatever you wear, just make it all blue. And so the cover of our first record was us sitting in front of this Airstream trailer wearing all denim. And we had our first show like the next week. And we thought, well, let's just wear that because, we know it looks good. And so began this thing where it unified the three of us. And now what it's become is, people message, hey, what are we wearing in Louisville? What are we wearing? It's like people are finding that they can belong to it also. And that is my favorite part of it, to be honest, is that I say it a lot from stage, and it's because I mean it. I could line the girls up on my back porch right here and sing my heart out to an empty backyard. If people aren't there to worship with us, that I just want people to understand they're as big or bigger a part of what's happening in that at these shows than we are. And so it's important to me that they're in uniform because we're really all in it together. So yeah, it's taken a life of its own. And we've even gotten to the point now where we're hand making a lot of these outfits, and that has grown to become quite a task. So maybe we'll scale it back a little bit moving into next year.
Are you making stuff, or is somebody else hand making it?
I did my part. We just got to play at the Red Rocks Amphitheater for an event, and Taylor wanted to have special clothes, and so we hand painted them, and it took all in about 2 weeks to get everybody's clothes painted and finished. And mine actually, I think you can lean it against the wall. That paint hardened and dried, and it is not terribly flexible clothing anymore.
But it looked good on stage.
Boy, it photographed like all painted things. It looked good from about 30 or 40 feet. So
oh, that's so funny. I love it. I love it. Well, I that's one of the things I enjoy about you guys, and it's you're better singers, but you're good dressers as well. So I really appreciate that about you guys. We've been speaking to Logan Cain of the award-winning group Cain. He and his sisters Madison and Taylor have a new book, a children's book called "I'm So Blessed." Logan, thank you so much.
Michael, thank you, man.